Welcome back. We are at session 3, and we're so, as always, just thrilled to be here with you. I'm Kenny, and this is
Jen.
And we're here with you for your body confidence, silencing that inner critic. And so we're still in the first 4 sessions, which means we're in the first half, and we're focusing a little bit on making sure you're set up for success in the outer game. So last session we talked about energy, cultivating energy, eating for energy, activities that either give us energy or take away so that we can maximize your energy so that you're feeling good. And if you didn't do session 2, I'm going to ask you to stop right here and go back and do it, because today actually builds on session 2. So session 3 is only really useful when you understand session 2. So if you need to go back, go back. We love you. We're going to be here for you when you come back. So just got to say that, because we know how tempting it is to skip around and to skip ahead and to get excited and not really be immersed in the program, but you will go so much further if you're fully immersed and committed. So just remember, let's stay together. So stay with us, hang in there with us, and we're going to be building on top of that.
Yeah, and so last week, as we talked about eating for energy and activities for life, what came up for you? Did you experience any challenges? Go ahead and grab your journal, because if you did experience any challenges, we'd like to invite you to just write it down. That way you can kind of have more of an awareness around where those challenges are coming up. And also it gives you a good opportunity to look at it as we're moving into the next week in today's material. What would you like to do differently? Maybe jot that down in your journal as well. What would you like to do differently to ensure inevitable success? So, are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. 100%.
So today is a juicy topic. We are going to be talking about honoring hunger and fullness. Mm-hmm. And so you may think, oh, I know when I'm hungry or when I'm full, but do you really? It's kind of been a little bit fast-paced life these days, and we find ourselves eating while we're on the go. Maybe we're grabbing a meal, or we're grabbing breakfast in the car on the way to work, or maybe we're on the phone or on our computer while we're eating lunch. And so maybe we aren't completely dialed in to our own body's cues. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're eating so quickly that we don't even know when we're full until we're stuffed. Mm-hmm. And if you think full is stuffed, we've got news for you. That ain't the truth.
No. And I just want to chime in and share that sometimes when we say the words like honoring hunger and fullness, sometimes people are like, what the heck do you mean, like honor? It's honoring seems to be this lost art that's starting to resurface and come back. And all we mean by honoring hunger and fullness is honoring your body's cues, honoring your needs, and relying on yourself and your intuition and internal cues and your body versus allowing external answers or factors to come in and tell you this is when you're supposed to eat, this is how much you're supposed to eat. Mm-hmm. So if you struggle with things like portion control or going to bed and then your stomach's growling and trying to figure out how much am I supposed to eat, when am I supposed to be eating, everybody's talking about all these different things. We're asking you to tap into you and honor your own needs and give yourself some space to really understand that. Mm-hmm. And to honor it.
That's
once
right.
You understand it.
Right. We touched on biodiversity last week, mm-hmm. and that what is energy giving as far as food is concerned might be different for you, just like it's different for me or different from Kenny. And we may have some shared things, but ultimately we all have different foods that work for our body, or maybe our activities are different. Well, the same thing happens with our hunger and our fullness. So a classic example of what you just said, ever go to a restaurant and they serve you this ginormous plate of food? What they're telling you is you need this mound that feeds a family of 4 to be full for yourself. That's an external cue for fullness, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody was raised with you have to eat all the food on your plate or you can't get up off the table? Yeah. So that was someone saying, oh, you don't know when you're actually full. You need to clean your plate. And that might just not be true. And so we'd like to invite you to get curious and maybe play a little bit with what are your body's hunger and fullness cues, and what does that look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
So this is really about tuning into your body. Mm-hmm. It's about raising awareness to what hunger actually is and what fullness actually is. And even more than that, are you hungry for food? Because many times our body triggers a craving for food when actually we are craving love. Maybe we just need a hug, or we need some socialization. Sometimes we reach mindlessly for food out of boredom, or sometimes we stress eat. And so what our body actually needs for nourishment is not food, but it might be a meditation moment, or it might be exercise. So there's many different ways that we can actually honor hunger and fullness in our life. And it's not just what's on your plate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics because I can't tell you how many times, and I know you've experienced this too as a coach, working with a client and they have no idea. It's so normal. So if that's you and this concept of hunger and fullness, if what we say just seems so foreign to you, please know that that is completely natural. And that's why we're going to give you tons of tools and strategies to just test out this next week so that you can tune in, just like Jen was saying. So let's start with hunger. And we're going to start with food. And so when we're thinking of honoring hunger, because this for me was the toughest thing to learn. Like, I understood fullness to an extent. Like, I knew when I overdid it. I knew when I needed to unbutton my pants and like slouch back and go, I can't breathe, that I overdid it. Or, but hunger, like whenever I was asked for the first time, how does your body let you know when to be hungry? I was like, what does that mean? Like, what does that even mean? I don't know. So this is the question we want to ask, because what normally happens most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, but like a lot of the time for many of us, we eat after we've been hungry for quite a while. And this is happening when you're at the point where you're like, I would eat my right arm off. Now we have a term for it. We call it hangry. Right. Like, okay, if we've created a term for it, this is an epidemic, people. Like, this is...
I mean, they sell Snickers bars off of this.
Yes. Oh my gosh, those commercials kill me, because I'm like, that's not going to make you feel that way. You're not going to finish that football game on that, But anyway, that's neither here nor there. No judgment. So if I were to ask you, if I were to say, okay, what lets you know that you're just barely beginning to get hungry or you're about to be hungry, what would you say? And it's okay if you're like, I don't freaking know. So, but if we think about this, and I'm not talking about when your stomach's growling and you have a headache or you're hangry. When we're at that point, we've gone over the threshold. When those are the cues that our body's saying you have waited too long. You can think about this like a gas tank, right? So you have your gas light that comes on, and you generally have 20, 30 miles or whatever until you're like dead halt on the side of the road. So you know that when that light comes on, you need to plan to get gas. Now, if you're anything like me, you might say, I've got 17 miles to go, and where I'm going is only 7 miles away. I'm good. I can actually get there and back, and because I like to live dangerously. But my husband and he has this joke, like, he's like, when you end up on the side of the road because you've ran out of gas, do not call me. I'm not coming to get you. And I'm like, whatever. You'll come get me. It's never happened, but...
And I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm on the half tank. Yeah. Trying to fill up.
Time to fill up.
Because we don't know what's going to happen. I might get stuck on 290 for, 6 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my husband's more like you. And I'm like I have a photo in my phone, I think, of when it actually said 0 one time. I was like, oh God, it's going to happen. It was really bad.
Anyway. My husband has ran out of gas.
Yeah.
He's so like we're flipped.
I haven't done it, but it wouldn't be surprising if I did. So yeah. And then I went and did that with my body too. There have been so many times where I've gotten busy and not taken the time to nourish my body. And then next thing I know, I don't care what it is. If it resembles food, I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to eat it all because I'm so uncomfortable. I just want to get back to comfort level. Like, I'm like, I need food. And when we're in that space, it's almost impossible to make wise choices.
Right.
So if it is a Snickers bar or, 5 pieces of toast or whatever it is, it's very easy to get stuck in that place, because when we're like that, it's like, who are we being?
Right.
And just like Jen was saying, am I bored, or am I emotional or stressed? There's all of these aspects. And then it's also, am I hangry? Did I wait too long? And so we're going to build a scale around this. You're going to have a handout in your portal where you get to see a scale. But if we are building a scale, and if you just imagine with me right now, like a temperature gauge. Okay, so you have like your little like thermometer. Yeah. And if you were to put 0 all the way up to 10, bless you, 0 all the way up to 10, somewhere around 1 and 2 is barely noticing hunger. 10 is, I could eat a horse. I'm going to eat my right arm off. I will eat my
that
kid.
entire family size Dorito bag.
Yes, exactly. Like, I don't care what it is, put it in my mouth. That sounded terrible, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so if we're doing this scale, we want to be mindful, because if we're getting to that 7, 8, 9, we're really in the danger zone. 10, we've gone way past it. We cannot be trusted to make decisions for ourselves and our health. And so, so really we want to look at, okay, well, how does my body know if my stomach's growling and I've got a headache or I'm hangry and that's too far? What happens first? So take a moment to think about that. You can pause for maybe 30, 60 seconds just to think about that. And I want us to give you some examples, because this one's tougher to think about. So Jen, what are some cues that your body gives you to let you know that you're going to be hungry soon?
So it took me a really long time. By the way, if you are completely clueless here and you're like, I have no idea until my stomach's growling, that is fine.
Yes.
That's where most of us start. And that was me. But for me now, I notice that the first thing that happens for me is I start to have like a mind that wanders.
Oh.
So I can't necessarily attend fully to the task. So if I'm doing something and all of a sudden I find myself in daydream land, like that's a clear sign that I need to start preparing for food. That I'm kind of hitting that, halfway on the gas tank sort of scenario. Yeah. Other things before I noticed that, higher up on the scale would be, I would start to kind of feel sluggish. So that was beyond like, okay, now I'm a quarter of a tank full now. I really need to start getting to, and then of course, hangry is the other one. Nobody likes the mommy monster, which is what my family calls me.
When it comes out.
Right. So I started to notice that when I start to have my mind wander, that's a clear sign that even though I don't feel hungry, it's coming. And I need to start thinking about it. The other thing I notice is I start to have, I want to say hallucinations. Like I start to smell food.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like even if there's no scent of food around, I am smelling food. So, or I start to think about food a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not hungry. I'm not physically hungry, but that's another cue. Like I call it the, hallucinations.
Yeah. And those are good ones. They're really common. And we don't always think about that. Like generally we're moving at such a fast pace that we're not even paying attention to our bodies. So this one is one where you might have to just work this week on becoming aware. And for me, it's very similar. The biggest thing would be, one of the things I noticed was I would look at a clock. And I'd look for a clock and I'd go, oh, it's noon. No wonder I'm hungry. Now, I didn't feel hungry. And the word hunger or the food didn't come up. But I'd look around for the time. And then I would suddenly say, like the word would come out, oh, well, no wonder. I need a snack or whatever. And so it was always really interesting, because it was like, well, I wasn't thinking about a snack. And there's, for me, when I'm at that 2 and I'm like, okay, And two, by the way, when you notice what your cues are, this is where you want to plan for food.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would notice that I was at around a 2, sometimes I would feel just a little light. That's kind of hard to explain. Now, if I'm hungry, I feel there's like anxious in my stomach. But there's a step before that I've noticed since then, since, exploring this, where it's not anxiousness, but it's almost like this lightness or empty feeling or sensation, I should say, in my stomach. I would just feel kind of light. And another one would be, I would just think of food. Like I would suddenly have a thought about food. And so that was a cue. Like, oh, okay, I'm not quite hungry yet, but I'm going to be. So I should go ahead and plan for that. So tons of different things that your particular body could do. And what we want to do is ask you to get really curious about this. Like, what are some things you can first list out? Okay, when I'm like 5 to 10 on my hunger scale, when I'm like, oh, I'm hungry, all the way up to that like starving threshold, where I'm delirious or hangry or whatever.
Got the shakes,
shaky,
feeling faint.
yes, all of that. Oh my gosh, that's like brings back memories for me. Ooh, very uncomfortable times of waiting way too long to eat. But when you're, before your body just halts you and says you have to eat or you're going to be out flat. First, maybe list those things, because sometimes those give us cues or clues as to what the original cue is. And so now you can give yourself that time to be a little bit more aware. And so when we switch that over and we look at like hunger and fullness in terms of life, this is that aspect of understanding what in me wants or needs to be nourished. And this can be tough too, because I'll never forget the first time that a coach asked me, well, what do you want? And I was like, what the heck do you mean? What do I want? Like, aren't you supposed to tell me? Aren't you the professional here? Like somebody else is supposed to know what I want. And same thing when, I talk a lot about counseling and about therapy. Same thing when my therapist would be like, well, what do you need? I'm like, what the heck am I paying you for? But that was just my mentality. I've gotten so used to relying on like other people and other things telling me what I'm supposed to want, what I'm supposed to need, what I'm supposed to feel, how much food is right, how much whatever, how many calories I'm supposed to have, or my macros or whatever. We get so used to that we're like disassociated from our bodies and ourselves. And so one of the things I would love to give you that really helped me begin to become aware of when am I hungry, what wants to be nourished, and some of these concepts was hunger, physical hunger, is a physical sensation. And even though when we're asking you to tap into your cues, you may start thinking a certain thing or feeling a certain way, but generally it's going to be something physical or something that leads you to the physical. Like when you're thinking about food, it's leading you to the physical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you might actually start salivating.
You might salivate, yes.
Or smell it.
Yes. Now, when something else wants to be nourished, that's a feeling. You can associate it with an emotion. So you might feel bored or sad or overwhelmed, stressed. And when you're wanting to eat because of a feeling, that's how you know. Like, that's the difference. Is this an emotion or is this a feeling? Am I going and opening up my fridge and looking in my pantry? And by the way, I'm pointing because we're in Jen's house and I pointed at her fridge and her pantry because the kitchen's over there. So when I'm opening, and I call it soul searching in the fridge, like whenever you know that you're not hungry, maybe you've already eaten or whatever, and you go and you open the fridge or the pantry and you don't even know exactly what you're doing there. So you leave and go sit on your couch or go do something else. And the next thing you know, you're back in there and you're not sure what you're looking for because nothing sounds like that. Is not, my ladies and gentlemen, that is not a physical sensation.
Yes, if nothing you look at sounds good to eat or you even want, that's definitely a cue that you want something else other than food.
Wants to be nourished. And this is a really good way, like sometimes we call it like food mood journaling, where it's not like you're writing down exactly what you're eating as much as you're noting when you when you have a feeling hunger, you do a little bit of journaling. Like you can jot down it's that question of, well, what wants to be nourished, or what do I want, or what do I need? Do I want comfort? Like, am I wanting wine and chocolate? And the easiest way to think about this is whenever you're like, I've had a hard day, I need an adult beverage. Like that is not, and it's okay to want an adult, but like we love wine. We're,
Wine and Wellness Wednesdays.
Yes. So there is no judgment here at all. Like I am the queen of, I was not only an emotional and stress eater, but a downright binge eater to a very unhealthy extreme. So my disordered relationship with food cost me chronic illness and issues. So I just want to say that no matter where you are in your relationship to food, none of this stuff that we're sharing comes from a place of judgment whatsoever. We're here to love you through it and to offer you some insight. So and that insight is becoming mindful. And that's what last session, Eating for Energy and Energy in Life, and this session, Honoring Hunger and Fullness, is about. This is about being mindful to your wants, needs, and your body. So sometimes asking those questions of, well, is there something in my life? Do I not have enough adventure or sweetness? Is there something I'm craving to have in my life that I'm starving myself of? So on that scale of 0 to 10, am I at a 10 because I'm starving of blank? And that's so unique to each of us. Sometimes we want love and acceptance and to feel desire and to feel all of these different things. And so this is where we're, it's deep stuff, and it takes a minute to understand it. And that's why we want to share so much, that this stuff takes a little bit of time. But if you're willing to be present with it and to maybe sometimes journal or become aware or just ask yourself those questions. And, a really good thing before we switch over to fullness that I just want to add in is those anchors that you set up in the beginning of the program are fantastic pattern interrupters, to where if, let's say, your necklace is an anchor and you're in a situation where you are trying to determine, like, is this a physical sensation? Is this emotional? Like, what's happening? Like, if you feel like you're not aware and you're catching yourself anchoring, like getting in touch with your anchor to bring yourself to that mindful place so that you can be present and honest with yourself, because we're really good at lying at ourselves, lying to ourselves. You know what I mean? We're really good at that.
Hiding from ourselves.
Hiding, yes. So, and we do that in our habits. A lot of times our habits are constructed to help us hide from ourselves. And so when we're at a level 2, that's when we want to plan for meeting our nourishment needs on the food scale and on the life scale. I'm curious, Jen, do you have just like one life activity or just thing, a life need that you notice that it gets in the danger zone if it's not being honored? Like if you get it up to that 7, 8, 9, 10, it can really impact you negatively.
So I don't know how this translates, but for me, I notice when my day is hyper scheduled, I get that caged in feeling and I need freedom.
Freedom, yes.
And when I need freedom, that is Jen's cue that she needs to go get ice cream. And my husband will tell you this. In the summer, sometimes when I was really, really busy and I was, doing talks and working with a ton of clients and doing all this stuff, I was caught in the schedule. And every night when he would come home, I would ask him to take me out for ice cream because that was getting out of the house, getting out of the routine.
Yeah.
And he's like, so we just need to buy stock in Brewster's because I think we spend $100 a week on ice cream. But I refuse to buy ice cream and keep it in my freezer because I know that when I feel that way, the first thing I do is go to the freezer. I'll eat half a gallon of ice cream in one sitting. And by the way, I don't do well with dairy. So as you can imagine.
So it cycles.
Exactly.
And so I'm curious, since that's one of yours, what is another way, like a non-edible way where you could satisfy that need for freedom.
Oh, so that's easy. That's getting outside. And so that's where my goal comes from. The mindfulness and movement and walking with David, that takes the place of that. I don't need ice cream to fill that. Get out of the house, go somewhere. And ice cream is also a do something with your husband, right? It all kind of plays in. So instead of the food doing it, now it's the walk or the yoga or whatever. So,
and that doesn't mean, and we're not saying like don't do the thing. So it doesn't mean you can't ever have ice cream.
No, right? it just means that when I go for ice cream, I've already met the other need.
Right. We just, when we find the need, we make sure that we meet it in an empowering way, in a way that's self-supported, that supports our goals and our health. But it doesn't mean that we have to deny ourselves. So if Jen wants ice cream, she's going to have ice cream, but she's going to have ice cream because she wants ice cream, not because she needs freedom.
And I'm going to go get a little bit instead of eating like the, 3 scoop whatever and feeling miserable after.
Because no matter how many gallons of ice cream you buy, it's not actually going to give you freedom. It's going to feel like freedom at first because you think you're breaking a rule because you're not supposed to have it because it's not good for your body or whatever, and sometimes that's how we establish our freedom. And so when we have these relationships with food, I mean, freedom's a big one to me. Freedom is a big need for me. So I would do what? You're going to tell me I can't have coffee? I'll drink coffee all day long. Are you kidding me? and I won't. But it's but all I want is coffee. You tell me I can't have something, it is the only thing I want. It's all I see. It's all I hear. It's all I smell. Suddenly, everybody has coffee in their hand. Everybody on TV has coffee, and everybody at work has coffee, and everybody that I've ever seen
but you don't have coffee
on the street. And I'm like, why can't I have coffee? And this is stupid. And whose idea was this? And sometimes when we have, if one of your I'm going to call it a core competency. That's not exactly what it is. It's more of it's a value. It's a thing that you really your need, that we have wants and we have needs. If freedom is one of your needs, it can be very, very dangerous to put yourself on any sort of restricted protocol, because people we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble if we're relying on restriction, deprivation, calorie counting, macro counting. I'm not saying those things are bad. Those things work wonderfully for many, many individuals, but not for all of us. We're unique. We're
That's exactly right. Yeah, don't tell me I can't do something because the first thing I'm going to do
that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to do it all day long. All day. That's so funny.
I'm telling you.
So funny.
That's why we get along so well.
Yeah, it is. We have so many similarities. And then we have differences that are so opposite that it's like they're perfectly complementary.
Yes.
So it's really funny. But yeah, we're pretty much the same person in 2 different bodies. It's interesting. So let's talk about fullness.
Sounds like a plan. So if you want to think about fullness, think about it in much the same way that you think about hunger, right? Have that temperature gauge. And so a 10 is I'm stuffed. I need to unzip my pants because I ate way too much and all I want to do is go on the couch and fall asleep for the next 10 hours. That food coma, or anybody ever have that food coma? That's about the same thing.
Yes,
where you're
food baby. We even have names for it, like a food baby. People are like, no, this is my food baby.
Right? So that would be 10. I'm overfull. I'm stuffed. And then at the bottom, of course, is I'm starving, right? So we've already covered the starving. When you're eating, you want to kind of fill up to a point where you feel energized. Full and satiety is actually the moment in time when the food is energizing your body for the rest of your day. So what does that even mean? It sounds really kind of hokey if you've never heard these terms before. And the first time I heard them, I was like, when my food makes me energized, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. And by the way, this particular handout is funny because you're going to see the temperature gauges. And one of the things she and I have both mentioned was like, this looks like a kindergartner's homework. And you might see that. But here's the thing. The great thing about keeping it this simple, and even if it sounds hokey, is that it's simple. Is that once we learn it, it's easier to follow through. So when we're eating for energy and honoring hunger and fullness, all of a sudden things start changing and we're not working quite as hard. We're working smarter and with our bodies versus against it.
Exactly. Yeah, that relationship is so huge. Work with your body. So when you start thinking about fullness, I'm going to pose this. If you are distracted while you're eating, how can you even know when you're full?
Good question.
So the first step to honoring your fullness is to know what it is. And this is an awareness thing. Did you know it takes literally 17 minutes for the hormone cascade in your body to tell you you're full in the first place? 17 minutes. Have you ever timed yourself eating lunch? Anybody in here guilty of eating in 5 minutes while they're doing 10 other things? Yeah, so if you're eating a burger, fries, and a shake, and you cram it in 5 minutes, you're going to be overfull because you haven't given your body the time to process what's coming in. So of course you don't know when you're actually full, and you end up in that overfull, I need to unbutton my pants stage, or food coma, or food baby, or any of the above.
Yeah,
any of them. And even worse, you may take all that in, and then it's only 7 minutes in, and you're like, I'm still hungry. And then you put more in. And so it's this like vicious cycle. But if you take a moment and be fully present with your meal and really take the time to slow it down and give your body the opportunity to savor your food. And so when we talked about hunger and we talked about physical hunger, that's part of it. But eating and fueling your body it's about your relationship with food. So if you are really present with your food and you're inhaling the aromas and you're allowing your mouth to salivate.
Like tasting it, you mean?
Yes, like tasting your food. If you're slowing down and going through the process and chewing. Because what happens when we're gulping down a burger, fries, and a shake in 5 minutes is maybe we're chewing 5 times and swallowing that whole. And that's why you get that lump in your gut and you can't digest it. Well, because a lot of digestion actually happens in your mouth. A lot of it, any carbohydrate, that's all your saliva. And if you're chewing and swallowing in 3 gulps, you're not giving your body the ample digestive enzymes to actually fully even digest what you're eating. So of course you're hungry and you're overstuffed and you're feeling hungry, and your body's just like, what the heck is going on here? But slowing down and really experiencing your food and being present is one of the easiest ways to become aware of when you're actually full. And that is how you can learn, okay, hey, you know what? Half of a hamburger really makes me ready to go outside and walk and enjoy the sunshine. So maybe I don't need that, half-pound burger. Maybe I only need a quarter pound. Or, whatever that is for you. I don't know why I'm talking about burgers. Maybe I want one. I haven't had one in a while.
Well, and one of the aspects of that is it goes right into eating for energy, because when we're eating and we're like basically shoveling food in our mouth and we like have another bite ready before this bite is even chewed and swallowed, and we're like you were saying, like we're bogging down the digestive system. So A, this is robbing you of energy, and B, this is like if you take this session and run with it, this is one of the most brilliant like body hacks you can do, because when we eat in that way so fast and in big chunks that the body can't process and assimilate the nutrients, it goes, I don't have time for this crap. Stored as fat.
That's exactly right.
So instead of instead of it being metabolized and used and everything going in its compartments where it's supposed to go, your body goes, this is too much. And we haven't even talked really about stress. So when you add stress to this scenario, that compounds that. Like you can't even process and digest. And so this aspect of slowing down is one of the most crucial things you can do when it comes to having a healthier body and giving yourself energy and honoring hunger and fullness and any of your health related goals, whether you're trying to reduce the number of medications you're on, lose body fat, gain muscle density, whatever your goal is, this is crucial to you accomplishing it.
Absolutely. So since we're talking about strategy here, how about we talk about a few tools that we have?
Yes.
So there are a bunch of different hacks that we can do. And the first thing I want to talk about is what happens when we're out eating, because we're social creatures, right? So maybe our body craves socialization, and that's needing to be nourished, and we pair that with a meal. And many times in our culture, food and socialization, or food and family and food and love, are intricately connected. And so how do we honor hunger and fullness when we're in a room full of people or we're at a restaurant? And they serve us that big plate, and we've been taught you have to clear your plate, right? So let's talk about some real simple hacks. Hack number 1, and everybody's heard this, but it really works. Ask them to box half of the meal and not even put it on your plate. If you're like me and you were raised that you don't get up from the table until your plate is cleared, have them not even put it on your plate, because you're going to have that guilt in the back of your mind until you kind of learn what your body actually needs. Another one that both of us love, because we were talking about this earlier, is have a race with the other people. Don't tell them that you're racing them now. And your race is to see who can finish last.
Can you be the last person at the table finished? And in my house, it's, you know how in a lot of homes, like when a family dinner, you say, like, people are like, I'm the first one done, I win. Mm-hmm. In my house, the last one who finishes their meal is the winner. So yeah, we do it backwards. So if you're last, you're first in this scenario.
It's awesome. And what the beauty behind that is you're slowing down. So you're giving your body the chance to chew your food. Imagine that. Enjoy socialization and nourish that need, that love and that connection that you need.
Breathe.
You're breathing. Imagine that. So life hack, in case you didn't know, if you're like inhaling your food instead of taking time to breathe, you can't even light your metabolic fire. It requires oxygen to digest and to release some of those calories from your food. So in order to burn, you need to have that oxygenation. Mm-hmm. It's just like a fire, right? A fire gets
furnace
snuffed out if there's no oxygen in there. So your body's the same way. We're amazing like that. So you're breathing, you're talking, you are taking your time. Maybe you're putting your fork down between bites, and you're the last person to finish. So your body's cued you that you're full. And maybe there is a little left on your plate. There's nothing wrong with adding that to the box, since it's already got a half your meal anyway. Mm-hmm. So those are some easy hacks.
And then you take it home and then you have 2 meals. I mean, you get to eat the same thing twice. You're like extending.
Yeah, another thing, and my husband and I do this often, is you go to a restaurant and you split a meal with someone.
Yes.
Because you already know it's going to be too much, and maybe you're not a fan of leftovers. And so, or maybe it's rich food and you don't like to eat rich food multiple times, you know, you're going to a nice steak dinner or whatever. We will actually share an appetizer and share an entree and share a dessert. And that way you get a little of everything. You're not over full. You get exactly what your body needs, and you can space it out. You still get the appetizer, entree, dessert, slow, nice, long meal. It's an experience. It's socialization, all that. But you're not having all of the pressure to eat everything on your plate, and you don't have to take it home because you're sharing it. Sometimes we go out with another couple and we share everything, and we do like a big family style dinner, and that's great too.
Absolutely. And you know, one of my favorites too, because I've been caught in this situation where, especially sushi, like it's really hard to eat or it's really hard not to eat. It's hard to leave behind 2 pieces of sushi on a plate, right? And so when you're meeting up with somebody that you haven't seen in a long time, and maybe you're going to be chatting for a little while, it's so easy when you see the food that's still there, even though you know you've honored your fullness needs and you're feeling satiated and absolutely fine, but it's sitting there sometimes, almost calling your name. And so even though you've decided you're done, it's there. So,
and it's raw, so it might still be calling your name.
Yeah. Like, literally. Yeah. So with that, you know, some of those other little things that you'll see on your handout is it crossing your silverware over the plate or pushing it away.
Announcing it. I'm done. I'm not going to eat anymore, because the fact that you're announcing it to whoever you're having a meal with, it's like saying, hey, extra accountability, hold me to this.
Yeah. And of course you can always ask the server to take it away, like to clear the table or put it out of reach or something like that. But yeah, those are some little things. And you can do all those things at home too. Like it's really easy to visualize that when you're out, but if you're home too, or having like a holiday dinner or a big family dinner and there's just food everywhere, this is when some of these little hacks and tips really come into play here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, and finally, there's a 20-minute meal.
Yes.
So this is a personal favorite of mine, and let me preface this by saying you're not going to make 20 minutes the first time. If you're used to eating in 5 to 7 minutes, it's going to be like torture to go for 20. So set a timer on your next meal and just notice how long from start to finish it takes you to eat that meal. Mm-hmm. Do it at lunch, especially if you tend to cram lunch, or breakfast. Like whatever meal you're usually the most rushed at is a good kind of barometer. And so start to increase your meal time by a couple minutes at a time. Just set the timer and try to slow down and pace yourself just a little bit and aim towards taking 20 minutes to eat your food. And just notice what kinds of cues your body gives you that you're actually full. Mm-hmm. Before you're stuffed and needing to push the plate away, that 20-minute meal is beautiful when you realize that you feel like, oh, hey, you kind of get that like jolt of energy because about 15 minutes in, you've already digested the quick carbs that are in your meal and some of the other more simply digested things because you've slowed down, you've chewed your food, you've allowed the saliva to do its job and your digestive enzymes, you're like primed the pump by eating slow. And so you're starting to get that blood sugar elevation and all the nutrients are being already delivered where they need to be. And you feel like, oh, hey, let's go sit outside. Let's go, for a walk or whatever that looks like. But you feel that kind of energetic boost. And that's when you know you're full. It's beautiful. It's amazing because you're like, oh, okay.
Like you feel nourished, like recharged.
You don't feel lack. I think that it's the absence of feeling that emptiness that Kenny was describing earlier. When you're hungry and you feel that light kind of empty, it's not that you have a hollow leg and you're trying to fill it up, but you just have that satiated feeling and you feel not heavy, but you're like, okay, I'm good.
I think one of the most amazing things about this, as you get used to this, not only does this optimize your health and optimize your energy and optimize your digestion and your body's ability to function, your hormones' ability to function, your body to be able to release fatty tissue, like all the things that your ability to think clearly and quickly and with strategy and focus, because what's the purpose of eating? Like if we break it down, what is the purpose of it? It's to nourish our bodies so that we can live this life, right? So that we can enjoy our experience of life. And so I think one of the beautiful things about this though is Jen and I are both of the belief system that, and if I don't want to speak for you, so if you want to correct any of this, please jump in, but we're not restrictive type eaters. We're more of, we like to teach people intuitive eating and we eat intuitively. So we don't say things like we're never going to have dairy, even though dairy doesn't serve our bodies. So we don't eat it all the time, but it doesn't mean that we're never going to have it. And so the difference between starving yourself of something and not is when you super restrict yourself, there's tends to be a screw it all binge. Like when you super restrict your food and deny yourself certain foods, sometimes when you get the chance to eat that food, it's almost like just all hell breaks loose.
That's right.
Now, what we're saying is when you're in a scenario where you allow yourself the foods that maybe you don't eat on a regular basis, you're 20% of the time. So if you were doing the 80-20 rule, and 80% of the time you're eating nutrient-dense foods to fuel your body, and 20% of the time you decide you're eating whatever the heck you want, and you go out to dinner with friends, and you're like, there's this defiant part of us that sometimes like, I didn't have what I want, it's cheat day, it's my night out, whatever. Okay, calm down, Susan. These are the hacks. Like if you use this, if you slow down, if you will give yourself 20 minutes, if you talk and breathe and chew, you get to enjoy this food without it controlling you.
Yes.
And that is such a key to becoming your body's ally and to eating in a way where every now and then you're going to eat something where you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. But it's just a thing that happened. And then you get right back on track and you're just reminded of that doesn't make me feel good. So I'm not going to do that all the time. But once your body gets the chance to heal, then you get to learn what your tolerance levels are. So for example, my body doesn't love dairy and gluten and sugar. It doesn't thrive off of those things. All three of those for me create inflammation. And a cascade of symptoms and pain and chronic conditions. However, I've done enough work to heal my body that every now and then I can have some ice cream and it's fine. But I'm not eating a full gallon in one sitting because I didn't let myself have it for 3 years.
That's right.
Does that mean? I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think that you touch on a key point, and that's the relationship with food. Mm-hmm. So no food is bad. There's no such thing as bad food. Food is not good or bad. And so many times we assign a good or bad value to a
like
food.
there's no food that's going and robbing a bank. Not that inherently makes you bad, but there's no food that's murdering any.
If you look at food truly as fuel for your body, and just recognize that some foods fuel your body better than others, you can kind of mend that relationship with food. Because if you're looking at food as bad, even if you're only sometimes indulging in it and you still have that in your head that it's bad, you're going to react to it.
Like you're going to think, have you ever said, I was so bad yesterday, I had 7 cookies, like, or whatever it is, like I was so bad, like, oh, I've been so good and then I was bad. We're associating that good and bad with us being good or bad, and that's creating that guilt shame spiral, and that
right, that inner critic. That fuels the inner critic, and it impacts our confidence. Oh, well, I must be bad because I ate 7 cookies, so I can't possibly ...
I've got no willpower.
Right.
I can't do it.
It's like melodrama city.
Yes.
So we're taking steps, and each of these sessions is geared towards healing your relationship with yourself. Healing your relationship with yourself means healing your relationship with food.
Absolutely.
Which means honoring your hunger and honoring your fullness.
Yes.
So,
and that one little tiny piece in there, just one of those other hacks you're going to see is eating for energy is geared to honor both your hunger and your fullness.
Yes.
And so this is just, with these 2 sessions, well, actually all 3, but with last session and today's session, you can do so much. And the best news is just like we talked about last time, you get to make it work for you. And so let's talk about action steps that we can put into place to where you can make this work for you. And so if you glance in your journal at session 1, what were your action steps? And session 2, what were your action steps? I'd love to invite you to jot down, okay, which of these action steps have stuck? Which would I like to improve? And just look at what you have there. And then just for ideas, because we want you to create the action steps that you know are going to set you up for the ultimate success so that you're actually following through. So a couple of options for actions that you can add to build on from session 1 and session 2 are taking a look first at the handout where you get to visually see the temperature gauges. So you'll see honoring hunger and fullness, and just getting like really aware and go, okay, can I notice when I'm at a level 2? Can I just start getting in tune with my body? And then eating to the point of that level 7 and taking a look at that 20-minute meal. That's another option. Like, okay, maybe right now I'm not ready to begin the 2 and the 7 quite yet. Let me just do the 20-minute meal. That's fine too. So you can take a look at these 2 handouts and determine, okay, what actions do I want to implement this week to help me take this to the next level, and just not forgetting about the action steps you've chosen previously, because like we said last time, the consistency is key. So you've got your 20-minute meal, you've got your honoring hunger and fullness handout. And so jot down some of those action steps, and remember, if it looks like too many, circle the ones that you can focus on between this week and next week, and you can always add.
That's right.
Always add to that.
And let's focus a little bit on grace with yourself, because this is week 3. Sometimes we've been really good about doing things, and one of our self-sabotages is, oh, I've been really good for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to be really bad. So just kind of notice where you are. Or the other thing that happens is you have a day that life happens and it just like knocks you off the rails. Have grace with yourself and forgive yourself. Be gentle with yourself as you're going through the process, because we're striving for improvement, not perfection. If your goal is perfection, you're setting yourself up for failure ultimately, because we're human.
Yeah.
And life happens.
It does. It does. It's not if I get off track, it's when I get off track. So we're going to get off track from time to time. And it's about, am I going to stay off track and spiral into this guilt and shame place and tell myself how I never follow through with any of the goals I ever set myself? Or am I just going to decide, what am I going to do now that I can do to take care of myself? Because at the end of the day, these decisions that we're making, it's an act of love for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So what can I do right now to extend myself some grace, some love? Instead of beating myself up about it, what can I do right now? And do that thing and go from there. So yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, because grace and acceptance is so important to the overall success, because then you'll keep going versus stopping and backsliding and staying off track for 3 days, 3 months, or 3 years before you start again.
Absolutely. And if you find yourself in this, because sometimes hunger and fullness is a hard week for people. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself struggling with, I'm not really sure, I'm not really understanding hunger and fullness, go into the Facebook group, post about it, put your questions there, put your struggles there, or reach out to Kenny and myself through Practice Better, or even in Facebook. You can hit us up in Messenger if you don't want to post it publicly, but we're here to support you, because this is definitely a journey. It's not something that you say, oh, okay, yeah, I've got this 2-7, boom. It really is a process. And so if you're having challenges during the process, please reach out and use the community. That's what it's there for.
Absolutely. And so now, just speaking of the Facebook group, I'd love for you to first take a moment and jot down, like, what is any ahas or insights or appreciations from this session? What is something that you just were reminded of and haven't thought about in a while, or something that was brand new that you learned that you're really wanting to take with you forward into the coming week? And please feel free to hop on and share it with the community as well. But yeah, jot that down. Take a moment, give yourself a moment, so that we do this practice to continue that success, because it's like we're like getting it solid, like we're integrating it. We're used to the term integration. I'm not sure what's another way to
give it time to sit.
Yeah, like to settle in. It's like settling in.
That's right.
So it's like when you have a cat that knocks everything off off your mantle, and maybe you like secure it so it's less likely that it's going to get knocked off. The more we secure these habits and the more we work on them, then one day you wake up and realize, oh, I'm not even struggling with such and such anymore.
Right, because it's a part of who you are.
Like, you're just different and you're not having to think about it anymore. So yeah, so take a moment, journal it out, put it on the Facebook page. Let us know, like, what is it? What's the takeaway from today's session? What's the one thing that you appreciate, or just it was like a light bulb went off? And let us know. So can you believe it's session 3?
Oh, I know. We're almost to the halfway point.
I know. You guys are doing fantastic. We are so proud of you for showing up for yourself in this way. You are cruising on through. Next week's really fantastic. We get a little bit into that mindfulness. So we're so excited to see you next week. And we just love you to pieces.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. You have whoa, I zoomed in. You have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you next time.